How does Judaism view Islam and Christianity? You know, one of the arguments that is constantly thrown in my face to prove Islam or Christianity is, look how popular they are. Look how many people they have believing in each of these religions. Billions of Christians and Muslims. And they say, well, isn't that proof that this is the ideology, the truth that's going to overtake the world? And I suppose if that's the case, well, Christianity and Islam are basically going to have to be at loggerheads, and they're going to be the ones in the final showdown. So Jews, on the other hand, have always maintained about 15 million the population. I mean, we haven't even made up our numbers pre-Holocaust. And so people would say to me, well, isn't that proof that, really there's nothing to see here? It's, you're not on the right track. And I say, well, isn't that interesting? And yet the world's eyes are constantly focused, magnified on the Jewish people and their state, the state of Israel. The world seemed to be, especially people even in JTV comments, people who are evangelic in their Christianity or Islam, constantly trying to, so desperate to get us tiny Jews to accept their beliefs and their ideology. So what's the Jewish view of this, and how do we respond to this notion of the popularity of other religions? And shouldn't that make us question ourselves? Well, the first thing to note is that the ideas of Judaism, which began with one man, Abraham, 3,000 years ago, where he was known as the Hebrew, which means, it comes from the word being like on the other side of the river. It was like Abraham was on one side, the rest of the world were on the other, worshipping idols, being pagans. And then Abraham comes along with this idea of one God, one mission, one purpose for all of humanity, one desire for relationship with all of humanity. And he then creates this people, this nation, who are given a Torah, who have a revelation at Mount Sinai. And the ideas of Judaism have transformed the world, even while we've maintained such a small population and perhaps been the only religion that isn't seeking converts. We've had converts, of course, and we welcome them, but we're not outwardly seeking missionizing. The world has dramatically transformed its values to that of Jewish values and principles, despite us maintaining our small numbers, despite us being hated and persecuted. And that should be pause for thought. And on top of that, consider these two great other religions that have vast amounts of followers, Christianity and Islam. Where do they get all their principles from? Their first books, their initial stories are exactly the same as the Jewish ones. They just say that we've now superseded the Jews. Now we have some additions, some changes to add on, but they're not subtracting from the Torah, at least the text of the Torah. They might say it may no longer apply. But isn't it amazing, unbelievable, that so much of the values and principles of Judaism have transferred to so many parts of the world, even political systems, inspired by many, especially liberal democracy, inspired by the principles and values espoused by the Hebrew Bible, that of the sanctity of human life, the dignity of the individual, equality before the law, justice before the law, family values, marriage as an ideal, world peace as an ideal, first articulated by Isaiah and ironically put on the wall of the United Nations in New York. Social justice, caring for the poor, the weak and the vulnerable. These were not values that were espoused by Greece and Rome, ancient Greece and Rome. And so, yes, we may have tiny numbers, but our ideas, through the help of the monotheistic offshoots of Judaism, Christianity and Islam, have transformed the world's values and understanding. And that should cause pause for thought. But it's not just me who's saying this. It was Maimonides, one of the great rabbinic thinkers of the medieval age, the Rambam, who wrote in his Mishnah Torah, in his famous Torah commentary, that this was all part of God's plan. The spread of Christianity and Islam were part of God's plan to spread Torah ideas and values. I want to quote to you what the Rambam says, have a listen to this because it's absolutely fascinating. This is in his Mishnah Torah. First of all, he talks about, I'm going to read you a quick paragraph about why he doesn't think Christianity is, the true path. He says, can there be a greater stumbling block than Christianity? Because all the prophets that spoke of the Messiah as the Redeemer of Israel and their Saviour, who would gather their dispersed and strengthen their observance of the mitzvot. In contrast, the Christian Messiah calls the Jews to be slain by the sword. So many Jews have been slain in the name of Christianity. Their remnants to be scattered and humbled, for the Torah to be altered. If you read Parshat Re'eh, God says if he brings a prophet before you who does miracles, but then says, don't follow the Torah, don't believe him, God's testing you. So clearly an example of that. And of course, it calls the majority of the world to err and serve a God other than the Lord. But, the Rambam continues, the intent of the creator of the world is not within the power of man to comprehend, for his ways are not our ways, nor are his thoughts our thoughts. And ultimately, all the deeds of Jesus of Nazareth and the Ishmaelite who arose after him, obviously he's referring there to Muhammad, will only serve to prepare the way for Mashiach, the Messiah's coming, and the improvement of the entire world, motivating the nations to serve God together. As it states, I will transform the peoples to a pure language that they will all call upon the name of God and serve him with one purpose. How will this come about? The Rambam asks, the entire world has already become filled with the mention of Mashiach, the Torah and mitzvot, through Islam and Christianity. These matters have been spread to the furthest islands, to many stubborn-hearted nations. They discuss these matters in the mitzvot of the Torah, saying, these mitzvot were true, but were already negated in the present age, and are not applicable for all time. Others say, implied in the mitzvot and the commandments are hidden concepts that cannot be understood simply. The Mashiach has already come and revealed those hidden truths. But when the true Messiah King will arise and prove successful, his position becoming exalted and uplifted, they will all return and realize that their ancestors endowed them with a false heritage, and their prophets and ancestors caused them to err. Now this is fascinating because the Rambam was acknowledging long ago that though Islam and Christianity may edit and add on certain things from Judaism and change things that we as Jews would consider problematic, they were used by God as vehicles, even though they caused a lot of persecution for Jews, both past and present. But they have, for whatever divine, mystical reason, mysterious reason, are being used as part of God's plan to prepare the world for the Messianic era, where the whole world comes to acknowledge the truth of the Torah and the God of Israel. And so for some reason, the Jewish people are to remain a minority throughout history, a small nation throughout history. And so when people say to me, well, doesn't the fact that you're so small and you don't have many followers, doesn't that show that, it's probably unlikely to be true? I say, actually look at it the other way around. Even despite our small numbers, we transform the world's values, and the world is slowly coming towards our vision for the world. Whether it's the progress of Western democracies and upholding human rights, or whether it's the fact that our enemies 2,000 years ago were pagans or polytheists, let's say the Romans, the Greeks, the Babylonians. Today, they're strict monotheists, the radical jihadi Islamists. So at least there's some progress on that part, even if we're still seeing barbarism. But that's, of course, at one extreme of humanity. But by and large, we are seeing these ideas spreading, and it's absolutely remarkable to think that the majority of the world today worships the God of Abraham, which was first articulated by one man who commanded no military empire, had no special, might or political power, and yet he transformed the world's values, and one small tiny people did. But this is also part of God's methodology for conveying himself to the world. He wants to use one small people to have, as Mark Twain said, their hands tied behind their backs throughout their history, to be few in number, persecuted, scattered all over the world, and yet despite all those things, survive, come through and transform the world's values, and return to their land after 2,000 years, unlike any other nation has ever done before, where they were scattered for so long and then returned. And it's to manifest this smallness of the Jewish people. Surviving, thriving, transforming the world is to help manifest God. The Jewish people are almost a vehicle for revealing godliness in the world. But there's another reason as well why the Jewish people are small, because it's also to reveal God's smallness. Now, what do I mean by that? That may sound almost heretical. Some religions get very excited by God's greatness, by his grandeur, how big and powerful he is. Allahu Akbar, God is great. And of course we say that God is great as well. But part of what makes God great in our eyes is the fact that he is sensitive, that he cares about every individual, that he wants to come down to earth and be in every aspect of our lives, our small lives, our every single small detail and little bit, the sensitivity there, the desire, the need for connection. That's actually what impresses us about God. That's where our connection lies. The fact that God is all powerful, all knowing, all eternal, very nice. But what's that got to do with me? It's interesting, when God reveals himself at Mount Sinai, he doesn't say, I'm the Lord, creator of heaven and earth. He says, I'm the Lord your God who took you out of Egypt. It's personal. It's about his need for personal relationship, for connection, to share his existence with someone other than him, because it's all very well being all powerful, all knowing, but there's actually a vulnerability there, because the question is it just going to be you, or are you going to share your amazing existence with another? There's a real vulnerability there, and that's something that we're really touched by. And that's sort of what manifests through the Jewish people. God allowing us to, ensuring that we thrive throughout history, despite all the odds being against us, shows God's care for the downtrodden, for the powerless. It shows God's character, it shows who God really is. And that's why we celebrate Passover. We've got Passover coming up soon. The great celebration of Passover. People say, okay, you were freed from slavery. Get over it. It was 3,000 years ago. And yeah, you're right. If we were just freed from slavery 3,300 years ago, we could get over it. But that's not what we're celebrating. What we're celebrating, what we can't get over, is the fact that God decided that he wanted to come down and take us out personally by the hand and say, hey, you don't belong to Pharaoh. You belong to me. We can't get over that. And so this is how I answer those who say, hey, why don't you guys have such high numbers? That's sort of the point of the Jewish people. We're here to reveal the divine in this world. And in some ways, many ways, it would be harder to show that, to present that to the world, if everything about us was so easy, if our existence was so natural and so comfortable. And so when you look at it like that, it actually becomes very beautiful. And Christianity and Islam, you can look at the bits that they introduced that came from Torah, that they pushed to parts of the world. We can welcome that. But some of the other additions, we as Jews don't consider especially helpful. And we look forward to the time where the whole world will come to acknowledge the truth of the God of Israel and his desire to dwell here on earth with the Jewish people and the entire world. Hi everybody, thanks for watching. If you want to watch another one, click here. If you want to subscribe to stay up to date with all the latest JTV content, click here. And if you're feeling really keen, you can click the join button down below underneath this video, where you can get perks including early access to new videos and private live discussions with me, where we can talk about JTV content and strategy moving forward, and I'll get to hear from you. Thanks again for watching.